Hello, and welcome to Book 5, Chapter 6 of You Should Be Reading. Today I would like to talk to you about Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Now, I have only read one other book of V.E. Schwab's, and that has been A Dark Shade of Magic, which I covered on You Should Be Reading a little while back. This is one I picked up rather recently because it was, I believe, one of her first, and it looked interesting. So I decided I was going to check it out. And check it out I did and enjoyed every minute of it. It is a book basically kind of looking at the superhero, supervillain genre in a bit of a different light. It is also one of the most aptly named books that I have ever read because Vicious not only describes the story that is told within, but also the two main characters who we are introduced to. Victor Vale and Eli Cardale, uh, two very brilliant, very arrogant students back in uh, university. But those days, those university days, was 10 years ago to the present day of our story, which is told in a series of not only flashbacks, but there's actually it's actually told kind of in two different styles, two different versions of flashbacks, because uh, you have something. There's chapters that is labeled 10 years ago, which is all about what's happened during their days, and they have chapters labeled. Where is it here? It was like 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, or last night, and it's told in these vignettes. Each chapter it lets you know what the time period is, and it deals with Victor and Eli and their inevitable confrontation, which the stage was kind of set 10 years ago, because they're both brilliant in back in their day 10 years ago, and one of them, Eli Cardale, comes up with a theory about extraordinary people, otherwise known as EOs, and how they are formed through trauma and a near-death experience. So they set out to, prove it because he's doing it for a thesis for his final year. But not only proving it, they end up doing a bit of an attempt to create one because Victor doing something with his thesis is on adrenal inducers, fight or flight reflex, that type of brain chemistry. He's fascinated with neuroscience. He postulates that they could make one by forcing a near-death experience, and they try it, and then they try it again when it doesn't work the first time, and it ends up actually happening. They actually end up making an EO out of Eli, who gains the ability to regenerate himself. So he can cut himself, and he's fine. He heals. Um, but then Victor, who ended up failing the first test, he wants it himself. He wants to prove the theory himself. He doesn't want Eli to take all the credit. So he gets his own ability, which is all about the causation or cessation of pain. But the whole thing ends up with a young girl that they are both kind of interested in dying. And of course, Victor goes to jail for 10 years. He comes out and decides he's tracking Eli down for revenge. Mm-hmm. It's one of those books. As I said, the title is very apt because both characters are vicious. The story is very dark. The characters that are involved are mostly dark and twisted. It's a very realistic book, the way things are postulated, besides the super abilities, of course. But otherwise, anything else is very realistically put forward. Yet the characters are not what I would call good people. Even the ones that could be good, um, like Sydney in it, uh, there's some darkness there to her as well. It is a very interesting book, the way it all plays out. The flashbacks to 10 years ago and the lesser flashbacks, which are slowly moving forward to the inevitable confrontation. It's all, the entire book is slowly showing how everything is building up to that point, that confrontation, and how it ends up happening. It is, uh, it is something to see, something to read. I want to say, I kind of want to liken it in a way to Watchmen, um, but as I've never read the book, I've only seen the movie. I kind of also don't. Um, Almost a little bit like Watchmen, a little bit like The Dark Knight Returns in the scope of how dark the subject matter in the story is, how dark the characters are. It's not like super dark and gritty, but it definitely has very seedy underbelly to the way everything is progressing in it. Uh, so I'm not sure. It's not exactly like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. Um, it's not steeped in that gritty, realistic, noir type thing. There are elements of it in here, but the characters are really interesting, especially Victor and Eli. Victor is nominally the hero of this book. And I say nominally the hero because, or should I say ostensibly the hero, because of the fact that Eli is, in a way, to me, so much worse of a character because he believes what he's doing is right. He has a very religious undertone to him, and that translates into fanatical zeal in what he's doing and how he believes it's right, how he believes he's mandated from God. And to me, that type of a character has always been that ultimate personification of what is supposed to be good, that fanatical zeal for goodness is a worse evil than evil could ever be, in my mind. So I liked that part of it. But Victor is by no means an innocent man. He he is both as nutty as Eli is, but he's also less willing, not less willing to kill, because Victor definitely will kill if he needs to. But he looks at things much more clinically, much more dispassionately than Eli does in the book. Victor is very much the type of person like, are you useful to me? All right then, you can live. He's that sort of clinical outlook on life. So I can't say that there's actually a hero in this story. Like I said, Vicious is an apt name for this book. Very apt. It describes the stories, it describes the characters in it. And I'm not going to say how it ends, how that big confrontation happens, but there's definitely some interesting things, interesting players that all end up coming together, and how things are. It's quite good. It's well worth your time to read. So that's it for this episode of You Should Be Reading. As always, if you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. Ring that notification bell as well. That helps. Throw a comment in that comment section. Have you read Vicious by V.E. Schwab? What did you think of it? Is there a sequel? I don't know, but it could be interesting if they do have one. But I think the story in itself wraps up quite nicely. So do all that, and until next time, my friends, you all take care, and remember, you should be reading Vicious by V.E. Schwab. And I'll see you next time.